Okay, so by my calculation, it's now 2 o'clock. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today here at our virtual open house. This is the second such event, actually, that the Aging Research Center of Newfoundland and Labrador has held. I'm Dr. Veronica Hutchings, and I'm the director of ARC-NL. We respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we host this event is traditional Mi'kmaq territory. And we acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of all the Mi'kmaq, Beothuk, Innu, and Inuit peoples of this province. I encourage everyone to reflect on the lands where you are located and the Indigenous peoples for whom it is their traditional territory. We're so pleased to host this event as we conclude June as Seniors Month. As many of you are aware, ARC-NL was established in 2018 as a pilot center within Memorial University to advance age-related research that is relevant to the older population of our province. Our mission is to create a network of researchers focused on issues related to aging, and then to share that information with the broader community, particularly those in the later stages of life. This research allows evidence-based decision-making and has real-world impact on our aging community. In addition to building research capacity, ARC-NL is focused on fostering partnerships, sharing knowledge, and engaging stakeholders. At this event today, we are looking to share some of the knowledge that our researchers are discovering as part of their work. Before we begin with our presentations, I'd like to take a moment to recognize Dr. Ian Sutherland, who's Vice President, Grenfell Campus Pro Tempore or Interim, and we will hear from him later on during the virtual open house. I now want to share with you quickly some housekeeping rules for today. This event is being hosted via Zoom, thanks to our partnership with NL Care, and we are also live streaming it on the Grenfell Campus Facebook page. So while we've all embraced communication technology during this pandemic, we want to make sure that this runs smoothly. So there are a few items that we want to share with you. First, this virtual open house is being recorded so that we can share the video more widely for those who are not able to join us live today. So to ensure that we have no issues with the broadband or the bandwidth of the video, for those attending via Zoom, we have disabled your camera and your microphones have been muted. If for some reason that hasn't worked, please I'll ask that you mute yourself and turn off your cameras. When we get to the Q&A portion of our presentations, those that are on Zoom, you can raise your hand by hitting the hand icon on the bottom right. So that it's actually a little smiley face emoticon that says reactions, I think it says. And if you click on that, then it says raise hand. So you just click on that. When you're called on, then you just need to click your microphone, the image of the microphone there on the bottom of your screen, and we'll be able to hear you ask your question. Once you've asked your question, hit that microphone icon again to mute yourself so that we can clearly hear the presenter answer your question. If you do have a follow-up, simply hit the microphone icon again to allow us to hear your follow-up. You follow similar steps if you'd like to share your video. Look for the movie camera icon next to the microphone, and that will turn your camera on and off. You don't need to share your video to ask a question or to share a comment if you don't wish to. That option is entirely up to you. You can also type your question in the chat box. Just hit the little chat icon, and that looks like a speech bubble. For those of you joining us via the Facebook live stream, you can ask a question by typing your question into the comment section. So unfortunately, there's no way for us to hear you speak through the Facebook, but we do have people monitoring the Facebook feed, and they will read out your question and we'll get them answered that way. We are also very pleased to have with us today ASL interpretation for the hearing impaired for today's event. Our objective is really to make this event as open and engaging as possible, given that it is a virtual event and the confines of the pandemic, and we want to share this information in a respectful environment. So the format we are following for today's event is, first we're actually going to hear a video message from the Honorable John Abbott, Minister of Children, Seniors and Social Development. Then we're going to get into the research presentations. So we have 3 different presentations who will each provide a short 5-minute presentation on the research. Following each presentation, we will have a 10-minute question period and answer session to allow those joining us to ask questions. Really, we're doing this research not only to advance our knowledge, but also for the people of this province to learn about it. Please follow the instructions I outlined earlier to be able to ask a question or share a comment. And then at the end, we will hear some concluding remarks from Dr. Sutherland. At this time, I want to introduce Minister Abbott's message. Minister Abbott was appointed to the Provincial Cabinet in April of 2021. However, he is no stranger to public service, having worked within government in a number of capacities, including Deputy Minister of Health, Municipal of Provincial Affairs and Transportation and Works, Assistant Deputy Minister of the Treasury Board, and CEO of Newfoundland and Labrador Housing. Minister is a former CEO of the Newfoundland and Labrador Division of the Canadian Mental Health Association and former CEO of the Health Council of Canada. In addition to children, seniors, and social development, he is also the minister responsible for the status of persons with disabilities, community sector, and Newfoundland and Labrador Housing Corporation. Here is the minister's message. There we go.
Good afternoon, and thank you to the Aging Research Centre, Newfoundland and Labrador, for the opportunity to bring greetings on behalf of the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador at your virtual open house. My apologies for not being able to virtually join you today, but I'm required to attend a pre-arranged meeting. Now let me begin by recognizing ARC-NL's leadership team, Director Veronica Hutchings, as well as Kelly Bowden, Benjamin Zendel, and Stephen Bornstein. I would like to thank each of you for your leadership efforts and successes in advancing seniors and aging research throughout the province. It is easy to see from the work of ARC-NL that you share government's commitment to further understand and plan for demographic changes, as well as to support healthy, active aging in age-friendly communities. Through Budget 2021, I am pleased to share that ARC-NL is receiving $100,000 to continue research to help understand, support, and address the opportunities and issues of an aging society in Newfoundland and Labrador. My department is looking forward to continued collaboration on this work. Through local primary research undertaken by ARC-NL, researchers are helping to inform the provincial government's programs, services, and policies to better meet the needs of the province's rapidly aging population. I hope you all enjoyed today's virtual open house. I am looking forward to learning more about the researchers and their work on aging demographics here in the province. Thank you and have a great summer.
ARC-NL was formed thanks in part to the financial contribution of the Department of Children, Seniors and Social Development. And this funding of our pilot center has enabled ARC-NL to award 12 research grants to date, totaling $118,000. The research supported by these grants covers a wide range of topics related to aging, including brain health, post-operative pain, medication use, maltreatment of seniors, gender and multimorbidity, and health services for vulnerable seniors. The researchers undertaking this work are from various disciplines within Memorial University's academic community, such as medicine, nursing, psychology, environmental science, pharmacy, human kinetics, and biology. ARC-NL is fostering the next generation of researchers with its ARC-NL graduate fellowships for master's level and PhD level students here at Memorial. Through funding provided by the Office of the Vice President of Research and the School of Graduate Studies at Memorial, ARC-NL has awarded 13 student fellowships totaling $134,166. ARC-NL has also facilitated Population Project and Grenfell Campus's Office of Research and Engagement funding of an additional student at approximately $4,000. We launched our 2020-21 call for applications in November of 2020, and its grant and fellowship awards and decisions will be announced very shortly. Now entering our third year, ARC-NL has accomplished much. There is so much more potential and work to do. We look forward to working with our stakeholders and building community support to ensure ARC-NL becomes a permanent and sustainable research center. And today I welcome some of the researchers at this event to share with you what they are learning from the research work that they are doing. It is our view that while it is to conduct research, it is also important to share the knowledge that is gained from that research with the public at large as well. So on to our first presentation. Dr. Benjamin Zendel holds the Canada Research Chair in Aging and Auditory Neuroscience and is Chair of Research with ARCANEL. Dr. Zendel is Assistant Professor in Aging and Auditory Neuroscience with the Faculty of Medicine at Memorial. At the CAN Lab, which is ARCANEL's main research facility at Memorial campus in St. John's, Dr. Zendel is leading research into age-related changes in hearing and cognition to generate knowledge to improve hearing abilities for older adults. The research is diverse and includes psychoacoustics, speech perception, music cognition, memory, and learning. Dr. Zendel earned his Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Calgary and his Master's and PhD from the University of Toronto. He completed a postdoctoral fellowship at the Université de Montréal. Dr. Zendel's presentation today is entitled, Can Music Training Improve Hearing in Older Adults? Age-related decline in hearing abilities are nearly universal and are one of the most commonly reported health issues in older adults. For many older adults, decline in hearing abilities leads to a difficulty understanding speech, especially when there's background noise, such as at a noisy restaurant, in a car, or at a party. The goal of his research is to find ways to improve hearing abilities, particularly the ability to understand speech when there is loud background noise. Welcome, Dr. Zendel.
Thank you very much, Veronica, and hope you can see my slides and see me. So thanks for the lovely introduction. Today I'm going to talk about whether music training can improve hearing abilities in older adults. And it's no surprise to anybody that hearing gets worse as we get older. Hearing difficulties in age is one of the most common health issues reported by older adults. It's actually unusual to find an older adult that doesn't report at least some issues with their hearing. Now, hearing abilities can lead to other pretty significant issues in life, things like social isolation. If you can't hear, it's hard to talk to people. This can lead to things like depression. And there's actually emerging research that shows that hearing loss and difficulties with hearing might predict cognitive decline. So finding ways to improve hearing abilities really is of utmost importance. Now, one of the most common hearing issues that older adults report, as Veronica mentioned, is a difficulty understanding speech when there's background noise. So when you're in a noisy coffee shop, a restaurant, a party, things like that, it's harder to understand speech, whereas when you're in a quiet room talking to somebody one-on-one, often there's very little difficulty understanding speech. And this difficulty understanding speech in background noise is a brain process. So we think about what the ear does. We have all these sounds in our environment, like music, somebody talking, say some construction noise. They all reach our ear at the same time. And your brain has to then organize what was the guitar, what was the person talking, and what was the construction noise so that you can understand the person talking. So it's a brain process. Now, the first hint we had here was looking at a standardized clinical assessment of speech and noise, often used by audiologists. I'll give you an example of what the test is. The way we test this usually is by presenting people with a sentence, and we ask the people to repeat the sentence aloud, and I'll get you to do that at home. You'll hear the first sentence is pretty easy to understand, and as we add background noise, it becomes harder. So here's the first sentence.
Tear a thin sheet from the yellow pad.
Hopefully everybody heard tear a thin sheet from the yellow pad. We can increase the level of the background noise.
Crouch before you jump or miss the mark.
So that was crouch before you jump or miss the mark, and we'll try a really hard one. So that one was the square pegs will settle in the round hole. So what we have here is the performance on that test is a function of age. And in this case, better hearing is down. So lower scores are better. And as you can see, as people get older, hearing abilities tend to get worse. The question is, and the question we wanted to see was whether music training impacted this, and it did. When we look at the rates of decline in musicians and non-musicians, we see very statistically significant differences for the scientists out there. For the non-scientists, what we see is the average 70-year-old musician is understanding speech and noise about as well as the average 50-year-old non-musician. So somehow musical training through auditory expertise is providing some benefit to this ability. Now, one of the problems with this research is that by comparing musicians and non-musicians, we might just be comparing people who had better hearing to begin with. It's certainly possible that people who are more likely to become musicians if they're born with better hearing. So the next study I want to talk about is looking at whether we could improve hearing abilities in older adults using music lessons. And we mimicked what you would see with a drug trial. So we randomized people into 3 groups, one that did music lessons, one that played a video game, and one that was a no contact control group. And the video game group was sort of our placebo. They were going to do something, but we didn't expect it to have any significant benefits on hearing. We did an assessment. They did 12 weeks of training, another assessment, another 12 weeks of training, and then a post-training assessment. Here's what the training looked like. It was computerized. So we brought a piano into everybody's home. We installed software on their computer, and they could follow a series of lessons and learn songs they liked. It's kind of like Guitar Hero or Rock Band, something like that. If you watch on the screen, you'll see there's bars that will fall down when I start the video. And the first lesson is fairly simple. Just tap one note in time to a metronome. And let's see how this participant does who's never played a piano before. And we came back then 6 months later, and we were in contact with her the whole time, and she worked through the lessons and learned some songs. And we asked her then to play the most difficult song she was able to learn in 6 months.
Parfait. Okay.
So pretty dramatic improvement. There was also a whole bunch of other benefits. A lot of our participants wanted to go get pianos afterwards, wanted to continue with the training. So there was clearly a good experience learning to play the piano. But the question is, did it improve speech and noise? And if it did, what were the underlying brain mechanisms that supported this improvement in understanding speech and noise? So we did 2 tests, one that looked at participants' brain waves using EEG, and one that looked at participants' brain structures and functions using something called Fmri. The first question is, did we improve speech and noise? And here we have a graph of the ability to understand speech. In this case, better hearing is up. This is how many words they're able to repeat back correctly in loud background noise. And we see the music training group from the pre-training to the midterm training to the post-training got better each time, an improvement of almost 10%. The other 2 groups showed no change. So we improved their ability with 6 months of music lessons. Then we wanted to look at what the brain was doing to try and figure out how this benefit was happening. So we did some analyses on what brain regions were active during this. And we found that in the EEG task, we found that areas related to something called lexical access. What this means is whenever you hear a word, you have to look it up in your big brain dictionary, your dictionary of words in your brain. And so we found brain areas that are responsible for doing that. We also found brain areas that were responsible for speech planning. So how am I going to move my lips, my tongue, and my larynx to produce that speech? And in this task, we asked people to repeat the words aloud. So this makes sense. They were planning on what to do. And these were the areas that were in fact enhanced by musical training. In the Fmri task, we saw very similar areas involved in planning speech, areas involved in lexical access, and an area involved in sound processing in the auditory cortex. But what was interesting is in the Fmri, we didn't want people to talk because they're in this tube and we don't want them to move very much. So we actually had them press a button. So this was very strange because in this case, they weren't planning speech. They were just listening.
Dr. Zendel, you're at 6 minutes, just so you know. So you're a minute over time.
I'm winding down. So what we found that was very interesting was that speech planning regions are used for speech perception. And in fact, one of the ways we hear is that your brain tries to mimic how you would move your lips and tongue to produce that speech. And it turns out that this mode of perception is actually more effective for understanding speech when there's background noise. So we think that music lessons improve the connection between the hearing and motor systems because learning music requires learning connections between sound and movement. And to summarize, 6 months of music lessons improve the ability to understand speech and noise. This is due to improved connections between auditory and motor systems. And we think that music training could serve as a foundation to improve hearing in older adults. Thank everybody for listening. Thank the funders and everybody who helped out on this research. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Thanks so much, Dr. Zendel. Does anyone have any questions? If you do, please raise your hand and then we'll call on you, and you can unmute yourself by pressing the little the microphone icon down there. Oh, okay. Stephen Bornstein has his hand up.
And can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I'm wondering what the next step in this research is. Where are you going next?
So one of the next things we're looking at is we're going to try and figure out actually two things we want to look at. One is to figure out what it is about music training that improves that ability, if we can optimize it, because music training, you know, people who become musicians spend decades to become expert musicians, maybe more. We only did 6 months, and we found small improvements, but statistically significant, which is very meaningful for us scientists. But what we want to do is see if we can find a way to optimize that training and make it more efficient. The second thing is, you know, I'm sure everybody here has met somebody who doesn't really like music. It doesn't really like music lessons, things like that. Again, because it takes so much time, if we can figure out who's the most susceptible to this type of training, and if there's a certain group of people, maybe people with better hearing, worse hearing, people who are more musical, people who are less musical, who knows who's going to be more susceptible? But those are important questions, so that if we were to ever use this in the medical world, and your doctor might say, well, you know, you're starting to lose your hearing, why don't you take music lessons? We could identify who is most likely to succeed from that. Thanks for the question, Stephen.
Quick follow-up.
Sure.
Have you tried comparing teaching people to play the piano and teaching people to sing? There might be a difference.
Yeah, so it's a good question. Actually, when this paper was published, another paper came out just a few months later that showed a similar benefit with choir singing. So what we really think is it's about that connection between the auditory and motor system. And so when you sing, there's a lot of motor involvement. You're moving your larynx and your tongue and your lips to produce a sound. So we don't necessarily think that there's going to be a major difference. There may be some individual differences. Some people like singing more than playing piano. Some people might like playing piano more than singing. But generally, we think so far it's a general benefit.
Thanks.
There's also a question here in the chat. Person from Sharon Bueller, she doesn't have, unfortunately, her microphone's not working. How long does it take to do the listening and improve separation of speech from background? And is the improvement retained?
So the first question, I mean, we saw the first jump after 3 months. And over 6 months, we found meaningful improvements in that ability. So 6 months is what I'm going to be comfortable saying. In terms of retainment, we weren't able to follow up with these people later on. There has been sort of the one hint of work we have in this area is another group has published work looking at people who did music lessons when they were young and then stopped, which is a pretty big population of people. And then tested them when I think they were in their late middle age, 40s, 50s. And that group of people had better hearing and were better able to do this speech and noise task than people who had never had music lessons. So if we assume that study is showing a causal effect of music training, then we can say they're retained for a very long period of time, it seems.
Great, thanks so much. I'm just noticing the time here, but is there anybody from Facebook? Were there any questions for the folks monitoring the Facebook feed? I'm going to assume no, since I'm not hearing you.
Not at the moment.
Wonderful.
No.
All right. So in that case, we'll move right along to our second set of presentations. So this is our next presentations are Dr. Rosa Tukuleska and Ms. Dawn Pittman, and they will They're presenting on supporting seniors in precarious times, a community-run Meals on Wheels program in Grossmoor. As the scale of the pandemic revealed itself, an organization in Norris Point, Newfoundland and Labrador, created a community-led Meals on Wheels program to support its seniors. Through the presentation, they are going to outline how the Bombay Cottage Hospital Heritage Corporation mobilized resources to support seniors and why community-based social enterprise are an asset to rural communities. So welcome so much to you both.
Thank you very much. I'm Dawn Pittman and I work at the Western Regional School of Nursing, and I'm also completing my PhD in nursing through Memorial University in St. John's.
Hi there, my name is Rosa Chukaliska. I'm an assistant professor in the Environment and Sustainability program at the School of Science and the Environment in Grenfell campus, and my background is in community planning and cultural geography. So through this presentation, we're going to outline how the Bombay Cottage Hospital Heritage Corporation mobilized their resources in support of seniors, and as Veronica mentioned, why community-based social enterprises are an asset to rural communities. On the next slide, Dawn is going to introduce the Cottage Hospital, and on the following slide, I'll speak a little bit about the Meals on Wheels program.
So this is the old Cottage Hospital in the town of Norris Point, Newfoundland, on the province's west coast. It's located within Grossmoor National Park. The old hospital was built in 1939 and closed in the early 2000s. The hospital was built by the community with the support of the government at the time, and it did deliver a range of healthcare services to residents in the area. After the new hospital opened in Norris Point, the old Cottage Hospital building was set to close for good. A group of community members came together, acquired the building from the province, and began the process of reimagining the future for the space and how it could serve the area. So the old Cottage Hospital, now called the Julia Ann Walsh Heritage Center, became a social enterprise and a community not-for-profit, which runs a number of community programming out of the site, including the creation of a hostel, which provides funds for maintaining the building. This is the social enterprise aspect. They also have offices for rent, including to medical practitioners like physiotherapists. And also they have space for new businesses who are looking to start up. There's a community library, a community radio station, meeting rooms, and a community kitchen. And their most recent initiative has to start a community-run daycare out of the site as well. So the converted site offers physical space for a range of activities, and it's all located within the heritage site that has social and cultural meaning for many residents in the area. And as a social enterprise, the Cottage Hospital is managed through a board of directors. It is incorporated, the Bombay Cottage Hospital Heritage Corp, and they have an executive director. The site is particularly responsive to the large number of older adults that live in the area. The median age of residents in Norris Point is older than the provincial average, and also 30% of the population in Norris Point is greater than 65 years of age. So this is in comparison to about 20% in the province as a whole. So the Bombay Cottage Hospital Heritage Corp works on a number of projects, and they are community partners for a number of initiatives. So now Rosa is going to explain the program.
Okay, thank you so much. So the Meals on Wheels program that we examined through our research began in March 2020, and it builds on the skills and the facilities and the networks that already existed at the Cottage Hospital because it is a community hub. In early February of 2020, before the pandemic really began, the Cottage Hospital was already running a community kitchen program, which offered free cookery classes that were focused on high nutrient, plant-based food. And those cookery classes were funded through Food First NL and a provincial job creation grant. And those cookery classes were aimed at an age group of about 35 to 75, and were really trying to support dietary change in a region with really high chronic conditions, especially diabetes and high blood pressure. As the impact of COVID-19 became apparent in March 2020, the funding was repurposed for the Meals on Wheels program, and the cookery class chef began to prepare boxed meals like lentil stew, split pea soup, and quinoa salad. The Meals on Wheels was able to secure further funding and to purchase the PPE, the personal protection equipment needed to run the program, and storage containers which would allow them to deliver meals to seniors in the region. In the fall of 2020, the Cottage Hospital continued to run the Meals on Wheels program as a dual program. There was both the Meals on Wheels program for vulnerable adults and also a takeout cafe service that fundraised for the program by selling boxed lunches to anybody who was interested. The ability of the Cottage Hospital to provide dozens of free meals or very low-cost meals to vulnerable adults is based on having the community assets to respond in a moment of crisis. The volunteer and business networks, which grew out of the Bond Bay Cottage Hospital Heritage Corporation social enterprise, and also the programming and grant management skills to develop a new program. They also had the community activism to respond within days of a regional public health shutdown. As well, the old Cottage Hospital itself has been key to the Meals on Wheels program and, of course, to other initiatives in this part of Gros Morne. The converted building means that there is a physical site available for a range of local activities, which include things like low-cost office space and meeting access, but which also has startup space and the community kitchen, which provided the venue for this particular initiative. Finally, the organizational structure of the Cottage Hospital, that it is a non-profit social enterprise, has created a setting which deliberately and actively reinvests in its community. And in our moment of crisis has demonstrated that resilience in rural areas is built on the social, physical, and in this case, the food skill assets of those rural communities. Okay, thank you very much. And we're finishing here with this photo of the Norris Point in Gros Morne.
Great. Thank you so much to both of you for that wonderful presentation. Are there any questions now? I'll get you to, just a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, for those of you on Zoom, there's a smiley face reactions icon at the bottom. You can hit that and then click raise your hand. I'll start to scroll through here to see who has a question. Or if there's somebody who has typed something in on Facebook.
Nothing at the moment, but they are slightly behind us. Of course, there's a slight lag, but I'm not seeing anything there right now.
Okay.
Thanks.
Veronica, there is one question, I think, from Stephen.
Okay, oh, there it is. Thank you. Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah. Am I right that no other town or city in the province has a Meals on Wheels program?
So I don't know. I'm not sure who else has those programs. Dawn, I don't know if you know.
I haven't heard of many. I know in the Western area that there is, I don't know of any more, and that the community has talked about how it's a deficit and that this is the only one that I do know of, though, in our area.
Yeah, well, thinking about the assets that you described that made this workable in Norris Point, what would you say about the challenges and facilitators to getting that kind of program started in, I don't know, let's say St. John's? I find it surprising that we don't have that program and wonder what lessons you might be able to teach St. John's about how to start a program like that here.
I think it's a great model what they have going there. The social enterprise is very community centric and it's very responsive to the needs of the community. So I feel that they have a good gauge on the what's available in the area and how they can respond to it. I think that they have community leaders and community champions, which are a real big important part of this as well. They have a strong staff and volunteer base. So I think there's a lot of things that came together for this social enterprise that makes it so successful. So I think that, you know, to replicate such a program elsewhere requires that kind of same level of support for sure. The want is there, but you need someone to actually run it and to facilitate it. And the old Cottage Hospital, that site is very fortunate for they have a lot of community buy-in.
Thanks.
And maybe
sorry, go ahead.
With one more comment. So the model that's present in Norris Point is being taken up the coast into the Northern Peninsula. So the executive director of the Cottage Hospital, Joni Cranston, along with community members in the town of Port-au-Choix, further in the Northern Peninsula, are in the process of establishing a community place, which will have a similar function to the Cottage Hospital. It's a social enterprise, which will have offices for rent to professionals, including medical professionals, and they do plan to put in a community kitchen. So the assets, the physical assets will be there. The community networks will also be present in Port au Choix as this particular project gets started. So there is a model which can be taken elsewhere as well, and is happening in parts of the West Coast.
There is a comment from Lee Thorne as well. The Red Cross in St. John's coordinates Meals on Wheels in the area. And there's also a comment from Sharon Bueller. Nice to see the Cottage Hospital. Spent many hours there long ago during a research project. How was the reception by the target group? How did you enlist the participants?
The Cottage Hospital, they found the participants. So a lot of them were older adults who were sheltering because of the first lockdown. And some of them were those that had returned and needed to quarantine. So it was just responsive to a need that the Cottage Hospital realized after they had to cancel their in-person cookery classes. So they repurposed a lot of their funding and time into this. So it was all managed through them. So they recruited for people to be involved.
Okay, great. And sorry, go ahead.
I guess because there's two presenters, we're each taking a turn answering part of the question here. I think the really interesting thing about the Cottage Hospital is how incredibly well networked they are within Norris Point. And here I'm thinking in my role as a geographer and community planner. So they really have the ability to build up that volunteer base and reach out to their networks to figure out what's happening in their communities, which is why they're able to respond so quickly and effectively put together the program in the space of a few weeks. So as Dawn mentioned, their participants were people that they were able to reach out to and effectively recruit because they had a really clear sense of what was happening there.
That's awesome. And Rochelle has shared in the chat, for those of you on Zoom, Rochelle has shared the link for the Red Cross for the Meals on Wheels program in that area. Gail Weidman has just added and also another comment, and then there's one more question, then we're going to have to move on. Connections for Seniors also runs a food security program for older adults in partnership with Hungry Heart and Manuel's River. They provide approximately 800 meals per month. And then Noel Schul, how did the pandemic affect Meals on Wheels?
Dawn, go ahead.
You can go ahead.
The Meals on Wheels program was established specifically in response to the pandemic. So they really repurposed assets and programs they already had in place. There were other interesting impacts within the program itself. So they had a hard time sourcing products because in March and April into May last year, as we know, transportation and food delivery was a little bit complicated. So the Cottage Hospital really dug in and asked for help from restaurants and other grocery stores and other networks to make sure they could actually get the ingredients they needed, occasionally organizing them amongst themselves so that if somebody was going into Deer Lake or Corner Brook for groceries, they would pick up ingredients for the community kitchen as well.
Okay.
Dawn, if you want to jump in.
Hi, Veronica, if I could just jump in here for a second. There's several people with their hands up, me included.
Okay.
So I'm going to lower my hand now, but I did want to say that we've got some chatter going on Facebook as well about Meals on Wheels. And Yvonne has posted the contact information in St. John's. And also Seniors NL reports that Meals on Wheels is offered in Grand Falls, Windsor, Carbonear, Bonavista, Grand Bank, Stephenville, and Bay St. George. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, and Gail has said, but your presentation highlights the importance of physical assets as well as community networks. Okay, Suzanne, she has her hand up as well, I see there. So this will be the last question, then we'll move on to the next presentation. Suzanne?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, excellent. What a great presentation and an excellent initiative, especially the social enterprise part of it all, because it certainly does engage everyone in the region and the area into what's happening. In addition to all those other places which actually do, because St. John's, of course, have had a Meals on Wheels program for many, many, many years. And it also had a tremendously robust group of volunteers who were committed to that for so long. And the Red Cross has certainly, stepped up to the plate and moved forward with that. But the other interesting one, I think, is the Grand Falls area, which was actually in the process of starting a Wheels to Meals program as well. So basically the social isolation part, and of course we know that COVID has certainly interrupted and interfered with all this, but I certainly think it's another option in terms of how we can really, you know, address that whole social isolation piece. So thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you
Wonderful.
for those comments, for all the feedback on other programs in the province. It's really exciting to hear them. Our project came out of work with the Norris Point Cottage Hospital. So it's wonderful to see incredible initiatives happening elsewhere.
And that's really, you know, what we're excited about is, you know, and the whole point behind ARC-NL is to engage, you know, researchers with the community and, you know, exploring questions that are meaningful to the residents of our province and helping us all to live better. So thank you so much to Rosa and Don. I really, really appreciate your presentation there. Our third presentation this afternoon is actually one of our student members, Alicia Follett. Alicia is a student member of ARC-NL and completed her Bachelor of Science Biology degree in honors at Memorial this past spring. Her grad thesis actually focused on gene expression in fruit flies that are associated with both aging and neurodegenerative disease, which she completed under the supervision of Dr. Brian Stavely. She begins her Master's of Science in Medicine and Neuroscience this year, and her research will investigate environmental and genetic factors of hearing loss and neurodegenerative disease under the co-supervision of Dr. Ben Zendel, who you heard earlier, as well as Dr. Terry Lynn Young. So Alicia is actually currently a research assistant with ARC-NL, where we've tasked her to review the academic literature studying age-friendly communities, because this, as Minister Abbott mentioned in his comments, is really important to our province. The work has allowed her to explore the sociological and political aspects of the aging process, where her previous research experience had focused on the cell and molecular level. So today, she's going to provide us with a few of the insights that she has gleaned from her literature review. Take it away, Alicia.
Hello, folks. I will be walking you through a quick overview of a recent literature review that I've conducted on age-friendly communities, also known as AFCs. To begin, I will first give an introduction to what AFCs actually are. Then I will point out 3 of the challenges which stop communities from becoming age-friendly, as it is only through addressing these challenges that we can make our communities more age-friendly, which, as you will see, makes our communities more inclusive for everyone. Finally, I'll end it with some thoughts on AFCs within the Newfoundland and Labrador context, with some time left over for some questions. Although intuitively, I am sure most of you can imagine what an age-friendly community might look like. An age-friendly community, in short, is a community that strives to be inclusive and supportive of older adults and enables them to age in place. Inclusive and supportive communities foster independence and empowerment, which are correlated with happier lives. The Age-Friendly Community Initiative was spearheaded by the World Health Organization in 2006 through the help of the Public Health Agency of Canada, who played an integral role in the development of the 8 domains currently identified as components of an age-friendly community. These 8 domains can be broken down further into 3 subsections, namely the built environment, which includes things like accessible buildings, transportation, and affordable housing. The social environment, which tries to decrease the risk of social isolation through encouraging people to be active members within their communities. And the last subsection, which encompasses community support and health services and the communication and information associated with these services. Recently, it has been highlighted in the literature that the World Health Organization should include a 4th subsection consisting of the digital environment. As we have all learned through the past year, the ability to communicate digitally can decrease isolation and provide another way to communicate, such as what we're doing right now. The importance of age-friendly initiatives is becoming more and more evident as the world population continues to age. As our bodies age, we naturally have different needs, and an age-friendly community works to support these needs. So it seems obvious that communities would want to become age-friendly, especially since being age-friendly means being more inclusive overall. So that begs the question, what is stopping this from happening? There are plenty of challenges associated with the Age-Friendly Community Initiative. However, 3 of the most documented within the literature include the fragmentation of responsibility, the long-term sustainability, and also the funding. Fragmentation of responsibility refers to the fact that all things age-friendly are often divided between different departments within organizations and governments. This leads to more red tape, a diffusion of responsibility and accountability, and ultimately results in slowing down the progress of these initiatives. The long-term sustainability of AFC initiatives has also been an issue. As they currently exist, many age-friendly initiatives place a high demand on volunteers, particularly in rural areas, often leading to volunteer burnout and the demise of the AFC initiative within these areas. There needs to be a culture shift where AFC becomes the way of a community instead of a one-off project if the changes are going to be maintained over the long term. And of course, there are funding issues. The funding for AFCs can come in the form of one-time grants that are not large enough to make major changes to infrastructure, which may be what a community needs to begin its shift to being more age-friendly. Thus, the fragmentation combined with inappropriate and/or inadequate funding contribute to the lack of permanent change to make communities more age-friendly. So given those challenges, how does this play out in the Newfoundland context? Our province is known for its strong sense of community and helping those who require assistance within our communities. This encompasses the age-friendly initiative at its core, which is a strength for communities trying to become more age-friendly. There have been successful age-friendly communities within our province. One example is the town of Clarenville. And by harnessing unique age-friendly characteristics that already exist within communities, it is possible to make a smoother transition into an age-friendly community. And while it's important to celebrate the strengths we have as a province, it is equally important to acknowledge the challenges we face and the different areas for improvement. Our province has the oldest demographic of any other province within our country, but unfortunately, there is not a lot of information available in the literature on AFCs within Newfoundland and Labrador. In conducting this literature review, I found much more information about other provinces and their age-friendly initiatives compared to our own. And part of this is, in fact, that they do not appear to be any researchers locally who have either the interest, expertise, or the ability to conduct such research, in spite of how important this area of research is. And this was in part what led to ARC&L in hiring me to conduct this review. There is definitely a need for more research to be conducted in this area to ensure the limited funds available for such initiatives are resulting in long-lasting and effective change. It is important to highlight the need for age-friendly communities within our province and to have discussions like the one today to promote future research and implementation of these initiatives. In closing, I would like to point out that at its core, an age-friendly community is inclusive of not just older adults, but to all individuals of a community by creating inclusive, respectful, and accessible spaces. But to become truly age-friendly, we must be proactive and address the well-documented challenges that come with creating AFCs. And that summarizes my presentation, and I'd be happy to try and answer any questions you may have on the topic and would love to hear your thoughts and comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Alicia. All right, I'll start scrolling through here now and see if we can find anyone raising your hand. Again, remember, it's just the reactions button, and then you can hit select raise your hand. Suzanne's iPad. Go ahead.
Hi, Alicia. That was a great overview. I'm curious to know whether or not you actually connected with Elizabeth Russell, who had completed her PhD thesis in the area of dissertation in the area of completing a review and an analysis, I guess, of the effectiveness of the implementation of the age-friendly program in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Thank you for the question. That's a great question. I wasn't in contact with Elizabeth specifically herself, but I did read her thesis and did have a look at one of her PDF PowerPoints that she had completed. And I did use some of the information from her research because, as you know her name, she's one of the only research that I could find coming out of Newfoundland that did have information about different communities who had received grants for conducting more age-friendly initiatives within their communities. But I do think I'm sure we would have a very interesting conversation if we did have the opportunity to connect.
I think that it's important to note that she was able to take the knowledge that she gleaned from this, and she had some pretty, solid recommendations that she made to government and others around how we could better implement that program in our province. But she actually took that to Guelph, where she's now a full-time professor, I think, there, working in that area. Yeah.
Pamela, you have your hand raised. Thanks for that.
Yeah, there's
Suzanne.
a comment here on Facebook. Seniors NL is suggesting, if this has not happened, this presenter should be connected with Henry Kiley with the Seniors and Aging Division regarding data and connection to their AFCs in the province.
We've already been speaking. So the literature review, actually, Alicia, I'll let you answer that question. You can answer this.
So the literature review that I was hired to do from ARC was more so to look at what was already published and what's available openly through different resources online. Through the next phase of the research, it will be connecting with people within our own province and accessing the resources that way. But I guess the initial beginning of the research was to really look to see what was already published and what's available and what's happening in other provinces and also globally as well.
Yeah. So while this is a presentation, Alicia is actually authoring a white paper as well that will be shared with government, and then so we're that paper is nearly done. We're just doing the final edits now, and that will be shared with Henry. And we're in the works of trying to arrange schedules to meet with him as well. So yes, that is well on the way, and that's part of the reason why we actually hired Alicia. As she mentioned in her presentation, this is something that's really important, and I think it's important to the government, it's important to ARC-NL, and it's important to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. We want to make sure that the research that we're funding, the work that we're doing here, is relevant, and it's not just doing research for the sake of research. We're trying to make it as relevant and as engaging as possible. So there's a bunch of comments here. There's one, right? Sharon Bueller, often the initiatives are begun by the champions and they die when those people, often women, leave. Do you find any tips for sustaining the work?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different recommendations within the literature. One of the things that I found that would help with the sustainability of these types of initiatives is finding common goals with other types of initiatives that the government and the community would find important. So a few of these that I had found were the sustainability of the province. So seeing that the age-friendly initiative also ties in with encouraging the population to remain within the province. So as you know, Newfoundland, we have a pretty unique migration pattern where a lot of younger people tend to move away for work, and then often as they retire, they do move back home. So capitalizing on this and increasing the attractiveness of the province by creating an age-friendly province, we can encourage people to move back into Newfoundland. And so by kind of pairing it with that initiative, it may be possible to increase the sustainability of it that way. Another aspect of it would also be through economic stability. So by increasing the goods and services that we do offer to older adults within our communities, it may be possible to create new jobs and new work opportunities, and this would increase the economic stability. And also, as you've seen through the Meals on Wheels presentation that we just seen, they are using the funding that they are getting from the Meals on Wheels to put back into the community. So initiatives like this, I think, too, are really, really great ways to increase the sustainability of it, and as well as combining it with the environmental footprint. So as you know, climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, and global warming is an extremely important topic right now because we are arguably living through another mass extinction. So many governments are looking for ways to decrease their environmental footprint, and by increasing the friendliness and the walkability of environments which tie directly into age-friendly initiatives, it's possible to decrease our environmental footprint as well. So I think kind of lumping different movements in together, it's possible to increase the sustainability of these types of initiatives.
I'm just conscious of the time, and I do want us to end on time today. So unfortunately, there are some more comments there, and that was actually one of the questions is about seniors issues, whether the literature examined seniors issues and solutions to conflict. Anybody, if you'd like to continue this, or if you have further questions, please feel free to email us at arc@grenfell.mun.ca. So that's ARC@GRENFELL.mun.ca, and maybe Rochelle, you could add our email address into the chat there, and Pamela, perhaps you could share it on Facebook so people can, if you want to continue the discussion, you can do it that way, but I do want to make sure that we try to end on time. And we do have one more speaker this afternoon, and that's Dr. Ian Sutherland, who is the new Vice President here at Grenfell Campus. And Dr. Sutherland started in this position just a couple of weeks ago. So I believe this is actually one of his first public events in this capacity. So we are so thrilled to that he would join us. I actually have quite a lovely introduction, but in the spirit of saving time, I'm just going to say that prior to joining Grenfell, he was the Dean of School of Music at Memorial, and we are very thrilled to have him here at Grenfell campus. Welcome, Dr. Sutherland.
Thank you very much, Veronica, and I very much appreciate an abridged introduction. I always cringe a little bit when I hear people talking about me like that. But thank you, and good afternoon to everyone, or potentially good morning or good evening if you're in a different time zone. I want to thank you all very much for joining us here today. As Veronica said, I'm new to Grenfell campus. I've been in the role less than 2 weeks. So I'm learning every day. And today was absolutely no exception. And what a wonderful first engagement, or at least public engagement for me with ARC-NL. Wonderful to learn from these great researchers, and of course the information that Veronica provided at the start. I do want to, of course, commend the researchers who presented and provided us with such insightful research on what's happening in age-related research, particularly here in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. It's really impressive, and I think it creates excitement, particularly around the diversity of that research, from music to Meals on Wheels to the wonderful literature review from Alicia. So congratulations to the researchers, and my thanks, and no doubt the thanks of all of us. I'm thrilled, of course, as Vice President Grenfell Campus at Memorial University, to have the honor and privilege of serving as the chair of the management board of ARC-NL. Now, that's going to provide me a wonderful opportunity to work very closely with Veronica, the core leadership team of ARC-NL, the advisory council, and of course, my colleagues on the management board. And we're going to be working really hard together to ensure the continued success of ARC-NL, and particularly to achieve a permanent status as a research center within Memorial University, and of course, based right here at Grenfell campus. I also want to acknowledge the work of Dr. Leslie Cake, Professor Emeritus, for the tremendous role that he has played as an advocate and a visionary for aging research here in the Aging Research Center, and to have it based at Grenfell campus. This is a tremendous legacy for Dr. Cake, and I'm going to do my part to work with the leadership team and the management and the advisory council to continue that work forwards. I also want to thank the Department of Children, Seniors and Social Development for its financial contributions to Memorial University, and of course, its support of ARC-NL. And it was wonderful to hear the announcement from Minister Abbott of an additional $100,000 in funding going forwards in this year's budget. I look forward to building community support and working with all of you and connecting with all of you as we move forwards. And I'll end there just by simply saying thank you to all of you for joining, and congratulations again, and our thanks to the researchers that provided such a wonderful afternoon of informative presentations. So thank you, everyone, and I wish you all the best. I'll turn it back to Veronica.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Sutherland. And again, I want to join with him in terms of thanking our researchers who presented here today, and in particular, all of you for joining us today. As I mentioned, we've recorded this open house, and it will be soon posted to our website. Rochelle has actually shared the website there. It's just www.grenfell.mun.ca. And if you don't want to remember all that, you can just do /ARC, A-R-C, and it will still get you to that big long website there. Yeah, I especially want to thank the people who, I also would like to thank the people who helped put this off today. In particular, Carmel Turpin, who is the coordinator with ARC-NL. She began with us this past January, and she has been instrumental in putting this together and doing all the heavy lifting for this. Wouldn't have happened today if it wasn't for you, Carmel, so thank you very much. I also want to thank the team and Newfoundland and Labrador Center for Applied Health Research. They've been a founding partner with ARC-NL and incredibly involved in all our initiatives. And again, it's through their help that we've been able to, and their partnership, we've been able to do this through Zoom, so that we've been able to kind of have this back and forth questions and whatnot. In particular, thanks to Rochelle and Tyrone for your technical support. Again, thank you to ARC-NL's key funders, Newfoundland and Labrador's Department of Children, Seniors and Social Development, to Memorial University's Office of the Vice President of Research, School of Graduate Studies, and of course, Grenfell Campus and its Office of Research and Engagement. As Dr. Sutherland noted, we look forward to building a community support to ensure that ARC-NL becomes a permanent and sustainable research resource for all of us here. So thank you very much for joining us. Have a great summer, everyone, and continue to stay safe.